Good day and welcome Comet staff to your Spring 2023 OST test prep and readiness video. If you are somebody who proctored a fall or mid-year end of course in the high school and you use this link in our Google Classroom, you do not need to have this additional training. Let's go ahead and begin. Okay, we're going to start off with the Test Administrator's Manual, also called the TAM. As someone who may proctor a test, which means that you're going to have a computer and that there are going to be students who are accessing a link on their computer through your computer. If you're someone who wants to look at the entire manual, 127 pages, you can click here. Much of what we're going to talk about throughout, it can be found right here at this manual. Now, we've gone and took little snapshots or use the appendices that the state provided to answer the major questions. And I do a good job of getting in there and answering a lot of these questions as well, but I know some individuals really want to have that entire manual at their fingertips. This is where you would find it. If you're someone who has never proctored the state test before, you need to take this Test Administrator Certification course. It's a 30-minute course that you should do after this video. At the end of that course, you're going to receive a certification. You will keep that for your own records. The second manual that you are going to want to get your hands on, or at least have access to, is the Ohio's Accessibility Manual. This isn't just for our teachers that are students with IEPs or 504 plans. It may be questions that you have based off of universal tools. There are some things that all students can receive. Well, what are those tools? You can find that here in the Ohio Accessibility Manual. So what grades and subjects are going to be tested? This hasn't changed a whole lot in the elementary and middle school. ELA and math, all grades 3 through 8. In science, we have grade 5 and grade 8. In the high school, we have our end of course tests for ELA 2, Algebra 1, Geometry, Bio, American History, and American Government. So when will we be testing? The state has determined a large testing window, and within that large testing window, then we pick a district 15-day test window that everyone in the district has to test within. So our elementary ELA window has to be the same as our middle school and high school window. You can see here that our window that we've chosen for Genoa is April 11th through the 28th. Technically, that's actually a 14-day window because we are backed up to Easter Monday. So we are as close to the end of the state testing window as we can be, but by doing so, we do lose one additional day. That is for all ELA testing. Our second window then for math, science, and social studies is April 24th through May 12th. One thing to note here is that there is an overlap between the two windows. Much of our final week of ELA is going to be makeups, and then the following week then we will begin our math, science, and social studies. The length of time for these tests have not changed since I believe 2016. Most of them are between 75, 90, or 105 minutes. One thing to note with ELA is that although it is an hour and 45 minutes, because there are written sections within 6th grade ELA and beyond, you can extend that to up to 2 hours per part. You can't take 2 hours and 15 minutes on one part and an hour and 45 on the other, but you could take an additional 15 minutes on each part. So that is something to note for our middle school and high school teachers or proctors. Our students with accommodations, we should have some consideration when it comes to scheduling. As a reminder, headphones are only needed for those receiving read aloud, but it is a universal accommodation in math. Our makeup testings must occur within the district's test window. And as a reminder, our district test windows are at the end of both state testing windows. So a student who is absent or has a test interrupted, and we are able to, we get approved to open it back up, they're not required to resume his or her test with other students who are taking the test on the same day, but they may do so. Our calculator guidance has not changed. For our new proctors, there are no calculators on 3 through 5 math. There are 2 parts to all of our testing. For 6th and 7th grade, calculators are not allowed to be used on the first part, but they are allowed on the part 2. And then 8th grade and beyond, we are allowed to utilize a calculator, but there's a specific calculator recommended. This appendice does not work. However, you can find that here. And so a full calculator guidance policy can be found here. Some guidelines for testing. There's not a prescribed state test order, but as the district, we have put one in place. We could elect to administer more than one subject on the same day. We don't run into that until we get into testing makeups. Online test sessions can be set up for more than one test, which means you as a proctor can open up multiple subjects or multiple parts to proctor to different students at the same time. If a student is eligible for more than one test, ODE recommends that the student only takes one test per day. We do prescribe to that until we get into those makeup times, in which case we just have a window we have to get our testing in. So our 3 testing calendars are up in Google Classroom. So if I clicked on high school, I can see here my high school calendar system. Here we see the 15-day windows in the particular color. We also include STAR for that as well. And because this is high school, we also have our ACT in a different color as I try to get as many spring tests in one document as possible. We have our first window from the 11th to the 28th, and then our second window in blue here, we have an overlap. Okay, let's talk about some of the responsibilities that you have as a test administrator. First off, you have to have a teacher or test administrator user account. If you are a new educator that is not quite set up for you, if you already have an account but haven't accessed it this year, you have to get in there and reset your password. It's something that the state requires each and every year. You must follow and be aware of the state and district test security procedures. Be familiar with the features that our students are going to be using. Understand what the accommodations are for the students that you have within your classroom at that time. Know how to establish a test session. Approve students to test and monitor, which is something that if you are new, you'll be able to see how that occurs through that certification course. Knowing the times for each test that you are giving. Some different resources here for online texting, some troubleshooting. Again, there's your calculator policy again. Some Desmos calculators are up there as well. If you have any questions on how specifically our tests are scored, both the written portions and our fill in the blank multiple choice questions or drag and drops, you can find those here. We're going to dive in just to a few different testing security examples of some violations. So reviewing a test booklet, obviously that can be online, doesn't have to be a hard copy, or a student's answer document to review test content or student response. You can apply that virtually. Using a student's login information to access an online test and or review the test content. Obviously that's a major red flag no. Reviewing the test and creating a study guide in some way to release the test questions to students. Coaching a student in any manner to indicate a correct or incorrect answer during the test, or discussing tests with colleagues or students after a test has been administered. So that's probably the one that I would say we need to be aware of the most. We can't be talking about the tests specifically while the testing window is open. So we have to be very careful with that. And then we have some scenarios that can go with that. I will leave that to you. Obviously, you can go through this document on your own as well. Okay, so as we said, before you test, the first thing you're going to need to do is log into the Ohio State testing portal. This is the link that will get you there. It's going to pop up, Ohio State test. You can go to Google as well and type in Ohio State testing portal. It's going to take you right here. You're going to scroll down to the teachers and test administrators. You're going to click on that link and it's going to go to the login. Now, I've already logged in, so I apologize, but you would have to at that point put in your username and password to then take you to this page. And at this page then the TA interface, you can see it's locked right now, but this is where we would launch for tests. And we're actually going to get back to here in a little bit, just not right now. There are practice, there's a practice site as well on that same page and also a resource tab. The other thing is that you have testing blueprint for every content. You can take a look at how that test is broken down, how previous tests have been broken down to help guide you. Again, we're not teaching to the test, but our students should not be surprised with the format and expectation that they're going to see on the test. Okay, things that will also need to happen before testing. You will be receiving a folder. That folder will have your test, the roster, and the testing tickets. The testing ticket is the student-specific username and password. Make sure your room is prepared. There can't be any testing clues, charts, posters, maps. All that needs to be covered up. Blank papers, 2 sheets of blank paper to every student who's taken the LA test. Students can request additional paper. I believe that's also math test. I apologize, that's not on there. And then you're going to have your script. What are you going to say? So this is the online test highlights and script. You will have a hard copy of this, and it is the Appendix L. And you just follow this script to a T. Say this, get here, click this, and that script is going to help you as you give your test. Please do not get to the test date and not have looked at that script. It will be obvious to your students that you weren't ready for the day. So take a look at that script, highlight what you need to highlight, take some time through the hard copy that you will receive. Click on that link and go through it. Again, if you're doing the certification process, you'll see that script there as well. Okay. During the test, walk around, monitor the room. You are the official timekeeper. Put the start time on the board, put the end time on the board. It is okay to give time warnings. You have 15 minutes, you have 5 minutes remaining to your students. If a student has to leave, which they may, you may pause the test. If a student does not have the appropriate accommodations, that test time will continue. So if they do leave to use the restroom, get a drink, they are utilizing their own time. There's a lot of, is this you, are you sure this is you? At the front end of testing, and on the back end, it's the same thing. You're finished, you're going to submit the test, you're done. So it does give ample opportunities to make sure that we're testing the correct student and also that the correct student is submitting that test. Okay, so after completion of the test, what can or cannot a student do? A student can do silent work that is not related to the subject matter that they're being tested on. Okay, that would include but not exclude work on their device, as long as that work doesn't relate to the topic. So, for example, if I finish the LA test, I can't then go and work on a paper that I'm writing. Okay, so I know that in the lower levels, we sometimes say when you're finished, read a book. Well, we can't do that in ELA. That's not a problem with math and science. Use that as it applies to you within the test that you're giving. All right, so your support. Your building test coordinator will help with testing schedule, test accommodation, unusual test day circumstances, any violations of test security that may occur. You can contact myself with general testing policies, and even some of the items listed above. I have no issue with your building test coordinator helping with that. Questions about the test administration manual. Technical issues, you're going to have myself, Bethany, and Tom to help out with that. Whenever we start talking about the Ohio State test, we begin taking a look at different ways to prepare our students. We've talked about this a few different times, ways that can we utilize data, not just around testing season, but also throughout the year. And so I'm going to bring back up the Restart Readiness Assessment, which has now been renamed by the state, just the Readiness Assessment. And so far they've committed to having this resource for us through the 2024 school year. And at this point, all things would point to and indicate that this is something that's going to be staying around, again, as long as educators are using it. So I want to talk just a little bit about how we'd utilize the readiness assessment. And the way that I try to explain it to individuals is that this is a great way for us to get diagnostic and formative data in a short capacity. So I would call these more like quick checks. Can you utilize it as a large pre and post of content? Yes, there's an ability to do that. But the readiness assessment's best use, in my personal opinion, is that quick, 5 to 7 questions on content, on standards, pre and post, that then you can see, did my students master at 80% or better the content that I'm talking, that I taught about. Let's talk about how we access it. In the same way that our students would get a username and password testing ticket, it's the same username and password for the readiness assessment. Many schools pass out the testing ticket or their Cambian ticket at the beginning of the school year because their educators are using the benchmark assessments throughout the year. Okay, and we're going to continue to lead more towards utilizing data, and I just want to make this an option. And I know last year was an option that was utilized around testing. I think there are benefits for us that we could be utilizing it outside the testing windows as well. So how do I access it? In the same way that I accessed the state test, I come down to the TA interface, all right, how I would launch a test, but I can also launch trainings. And so when you open up the operational test, if you were to give, let's say, your high school ELA 2 test, I would come to the Ohio State test, find ELA 2, and click on that. Okay, but we're not there. I want us to come down to the readiness assessment. And the readiness assessment is where we have benchmarks and checkpoints. And as you remember, our checkpoints, I would consider that to be more quick checks. And our benchmarks would be more like an old school SLO pre and post of all the standards. So think of the benchmark as the entire grade level expectation standards. And then we have, I'm going to use checkpoints right here. Now we break it down into different standards that the state of Ohio has determined. That's great data then that throughout the year will help drive my instructions. If use of assessments and the evidence of student learning was a few of the components that your building admin spoke to you about when looking at OTES 2.0, this is a great additional source to go to in order to drive instruction within your classroom. And again, in order to do that, you would need the testing tickets for the students that you want to give the assessment to. You just need to let me know. I will get those testing tickets to you earlier than other individuals who do not indicate that they're going to utilize the readiness assessment. If you're not planning on using a readiness assessment, I'll give you your folder about 2 weeks out. If you're looking to utilize and ramp up the use of the readiness assessment, please let me know, and I'll get that information to you a little more expeditedly. Okay, well, you made it. I'm sure it was as riveting as I think it was. Please go ahead and click on this form right here. This is going to take you to a quick questionnaire, first name, last name, I reviewed. If you do have questions, put those questions in there, submit it. You do need to do this. Okay, this is something that I need to have on file for the state. If you need to take your TA certification, go back and do that. And again, we only do this one time per year. If you have any questions, please feel free to call or email me, and I will answer that, or I will find the answer for you and get it to you. Have a great day, everyone.